Okay, what's going on, everybody? My name is Mangg. Welcome back to Hanging with Mangg. So first off, let's talk about microphones for a second. You know, if I had to pick one aspect of my career that I really disliked, other than YouTube comments, but you know, you can just avoid those, so it's really not a problem. The one aspect I really dislike is audio. Like, I just don't have a really good ear for audio. I don't know anything about like audio setup and audio heart. Like, I got basically just thrown into the deep water of like audio hardware and setups. And I don't ever have like complaints about my audio. I mean, sometimes I don't read many comments, but I've caught some comments. Or like, I read a comment a while back that was like, dude, come on, you've been doing this for years. Like, why is your audio so shitty? And it's like, and most of the time I don't care. You know, the audio works. To my ear, it sounds fine. And so I just keep on keeping on. But then sometimes there'll be a problem. Like, something will change. Something will break or whatever. And I have to go back to, like, the drawing board with audio and try and get it back to where it sounds okay to me. Or I'll listen to some other YouTube channel or some audio or whatever. And it's like, wow, they sound so much better than I do. Like, their microphone just sounds so, I don't know, warm and crisp and nice and well-rounded. And I don't think it's like a cheap hardware issue. Because I've tried to like compensate for my lack of knowledge by just buying better equipment, but that really does not solve the inherent problem. So like yesterday I recorded audio for an exploring video, and I listened to it because like something got changed or something with my audio setup. Something got changed. I think like one of the knobs or two of the knobs got shifted. I don't know how it happened. It sounded different. And so I recorded the whole thing. I listened to it and was like, this does not sound great. But I just did not have the heart to re-record it. But then I was like, geez, I gotta do something about it. So I spent like an hour just fiddling with things, and I'm like, I don't know if this is any better. I swapped out my mic, which I don't know why. The mic I was using is perfectly fine, but I was like, screw it. Maybe if I just switch mics, it'll be different. So I switched mics. It sounded, you know, exactly the same. So right now I'm using my old microphone. I went through like a guide on setting up my compressor and my, you know, preamp and stuff like that. So I fiddled with a bunch of things. It sounded okay to me. I don't know if anyone listening to this wants to chime in with how it sounds. Again, the problem is I just don't know. I don't have an ear for it. I don't know what's really good or what I'm looking for when I'm trying to make good sounding audio. It's really just not an aspect of the job I love. I wish I could just like pay someone to come in and set it all up, and then I never touch it again, but I don't know if that actually exists. I don't know. Anyways, moving on. This week on this channel, we of course had a Plague Tale and Baldur's Gate 2.
So which one of us is gonna back the Talostra? You or me? I like a good competition.
That's going to continue this next week. Baldur's Gate 2 is definitely going to continue for a couple weeks at least. Probably 3 weeks. I don't know how long Plague Tale is exactly, but it doesn't seem like a game that's incredibly lengthy, so I doubt it'll go on for much longer. But you know, you think about it with my release schedule, it's not like a streamer where you show off like 8 hours of a game every day or something. You know, with my release schedule, my length of videos, I really don't do that many Let's Plays in a year. I don't know the exact count, but I would say, I mean, what do I do? Like 20 Let's Plays a year? So, which I guess is not terrible. You can consider how many games come out in a year. I do some retro stuff. But that's the way it is. That's what we do. That's what we like. That's how it is. Yeah. We're just keeping on. There's nothing really noteworthy coming out till March. One game. One game I did definitely want to play, and potentially Let's Play, is, this seems kind of loud. Probably. Yes, we get it. It's very scary. Can we just kill it with our overpowered weapons? One game I wanted to play is Noita, which was that game that was shown off at some E3 conference a while back, where it was like every pixel in the game is simulated, so you can like interact with every pixel, and you have like magic spells and stuff, and there's like a dungeon crawl. It looked pretty cool at the time. It came out. I haven't played it yet. It looks pretty cool. So I might do a Let's Play of that. My brother and Mert, we started playing Trine 4 together. We've played every Trine game together. We finally got around to playing Trine 4, and I pondered if I wanted to Let's Play it. I decided not to, because I figured I got enough to upload. But I'd also like us to do Magicka 2 at some point. And maybe I'll record that. God damn it. Hey, Engard. Happy New Year. God damn it. Other than that, it's gonna be same old, same old. Lock, if you could. Thank you. Over on the Exploring series, I released a video on it wasn't Christmas SCPs, right? That was last week. What the fuck did I release a video on? Oh, it was the thing with the sun, right? It was the sun thing. It was something with the sun. Fuck. What the hell was it? It's, the fifthism thing. That was what it was. Like fifthism, the book, no, the infection. Yeah. I don't remember the number, I don't remember the name, but I know I did it. I also released a video on carrion crawlers in D&D. Not my most popular video I've ever released. You know, it's just, it's not beholders, it's not dragons, you know, it's not mind flayers, just, no, it's just carrion crawlers. So, you know, it's a video I released, and now it's out there in the world, and now we're done. But this week, my big project was a video on SCP-4231, the Montauk House. It's a pretty lengthy SCP in general. Like, it's like 20,000 words or so. SCP-1730, you know, the big epic Site-13 one is like 27,000 words. So, it's pretty lengthy, but it ended up being a 56-minute long video, which I did not think it would be. Reason it was so much longer than like my 1730 video is because, for one, that video involved a lot of like action sequences and like just like chatter between MTFs and stuff, and so I could just sort of strip that down and leave it out. Whereas this did not have really action sequences or anything. And two is, god damn it, two, this SCP involved a lot more connections. I mean, actually, 1730 involves a lot of connections. This one involved a lot more like lore connections to the Scarlet King and to a couple other SCPs, and they were really like involved connections, not just like little references like SCP-1730 did. So it's a really pretty involved SCP. And so I had to just properly explain everything. It does involve, like, sexual abuse and shit. You know, it's a pretty dark SCP. From what I understand, it's a bit of a controversial SCP. It's a bit of a divisive one. I didn't, you know... It's not like I want to just gloss over the concept of sexual abuse in general. I mean, it's a real thing. It's no good. It's no bueno. But I was really just more interested in like the lore, as I tend to be when I make lore videos. So the actual article goes into a lot more detail, or, you know, more discussions and conversations related to this abuse. Whereas it's just like, I'll mention it, it exists, it's there, but look, I just want to tell you about the Scarlet King and shit, alright? So, oh, nice. Yeah, it took a while. I mean, that's a big project. 56-minute video is not, unless you're filming yourself just taking a shit for 56 minutes, usually a video of that length is not too easy to create. And so I actually released it late on Patreon. I had to give myself an extra day to finish it. And that's part of why I didn't want to like re-record the audio, because it took me over an hour to record all the audio for it, obviously. And so it's just like, this audio doesn't sound great, but do I really want to sit here for another hour when I'm already running late on this project? Just to make it sound a little better. But always the biggest problem with videos of that length is just finding all the pictures. And I tend to get a little lazy. Obviously, my goal is to always have like really specific art that's relevant to what I'm talking about. The longer the video, the less likely that is to happen.
Spectacular! I won't soon see another hunt like that.
Because even just finding 56 minutes of like generic pictures, like where I don't really care about the specific components of the picture, I just care about like the theme. And so I just collect like a huge horde of generic art or photographs. Even that takes a long time, because I am still picky. So a big chunk of most of this video contains like pictures of flooded buildings and flooded towns and stuff, because that relates in general to the SCP. But it's like, okay, that's fine, but I'm still a little picky. I don't want there to be any people in the pictures, you know, which is a general rule I have. I don't like to ever show people if possible. And I still want them to be somewhat interesting, so I couldn't just use photographs, because they're usually not that interesting, you know, of like Katrina or, you know, just like flooded areas. So I still had to scrounge up a whole bunch of artworks of flooded things, and that takes a while. It just, yeah, the whole project, it took a while. I think it's fine. It could be better. Obviously, I could have re-recorded the audio and blah, 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 but I'm sure people will be happy, since it's 56 minutes and people love that shit.
I'm thankful.
Yeah, but now, I'm in need of a break after something like that. It wears on you. So not this week, this coming week, I still have a video I'm going to work on. But I think the following week, I'm just going to be working on like reading a tale. Because that's usually how I take a break now.
Find the Kushala Dowra's roost higher up. Good luck, field team.
I'm sad that there's no more Lord Blackwood stuff for now.
Let's start investigating.
I did actually, someone did send me a tale they wrote for Lord Blackwood. They said that they were having trouble like signing up for the site and getting on the site. So they sent it to me. I don't really want to read anything that's not on the site. Which I think is how most SCP YouTubers feel. Because, like, even if they have something written for them by an author, they still... It generally gets put up on the site. But aside from that, it did seem pretty decent, and I would read it. But the only other problem was that it was sort of October Halloween themed. Like, it was based around like Sleepy Hollow and stuff, which is cool. I like that. But he sent it to me like right towards the end of October. So even if it was on the site, I just didn't have time to get it out. But other than that, I don't know if anyone else is writing Lord Blackwood stuff. So the tale I would read would not be Lord Blackwood, but it's, you know, because I don't want to do voices. A lot of tales have, like, dialogue, which makes sense. So I scrounged around looking for a decently high-rated tale that didn't have dialogue. But yeah, I just need to take a little break since, you know, this whole holiday season, like from September to December, there's no breaks allowed. You have to keep pumping out videos because that's when all the ad revenue is at its peak.
Watch that wind.
So I don't know. I'm gonna try to squeeze in another D&D video before then, but if I don't have the willpower, I'll just skip it. Moving on then. Let's talk about some role-manging, some role-playing, if you will. Wednesday, New Year's Day. Turned out to be a big day for role-playing games. I actually had 2 sessions that day. In the afternoon, I DM'd the first session of a new campaign for my family. And in the evening, we had our normal D&D 4E session. So let's talk about the family campaign. You know, of course, they refer to it as D&D. It is not. We're not playing D&D. They have played a little D&D. I did introduce them to it, but I don't really care for the system. I don't care for 5e, and They don't care to read anything to like really learn about how to play and customize their characters, so it's just bleh. And I have tried them out with Dungeon World, which they liked as well, but again, maybe a bit too much reading. Still too much reading. They don't want to read anything. So I needed to find the most bare bones system with absolutely no reading required. And that, of course, would be Maze Rats, our game of choice. So as I mentioned, somebody made a slightly customized version of Maze Rats to run Hot Springs Island. So we started out first session. I have the PDF. The books are on the way. I don't know when they're gonna arrive. I hope they arrive sometime soon, because using the PDF or something like that is a little annoying. You have to constantly like switch back and forth. It would just be so much faster with a book. Or maybe that's just me, I don't know. I prefer books in general. But, so, the, Hot Springs Island, it's a big island, it's a hex crawl, there's a lot of different factions, there's many different events and locations to explore, and basically the players are just put on this island with most likely a pretty basic general objective of just, like, find a bunch of treasure. And then they just get thrown into the mix, and you see what happens as they encounter these different factions and different individuals, and they sort of start to interfere and maybe help out, but helping out one group hurts another, and they get involved. Because you really can't help but get involved.
Injured. Fall back and wait for the next chance. Is not something I tolerate.
So the book, the book does not actually have like a recommended start for the group for like a campaign. It does not provide one, which was sort of perplexing to me. I thought they would have at least have like a few suggestions, but that's how little the starting matters, I guess. But I looked online, and the author, I believe it's the author, on his blog, he had the way that he likes to start it. I say he because, of course, that's just the term I default to. I'm sorry. They have a way that they like to start the game. And I was like, it sounds good. I don't have anything in mind. I'm just going to use it. So I basically just read their intro, which consists of the players being like arrested and accused of some crimes. And whether or not they actually did it doesn't really matter. They've just been framed or whatever. They got arrested. They're guilty, whether or not they actually are. And so instead of rotting away in jail or being executed or something, they instead get an offer from this company, the Martell Company. And the Martel Company will send them to these islands with a magical brand on their skin. And they have to go to this island and search for treasure. And the more treasure they bring back to the Martel Company, the sooner their brand will go away. But if they ignore it, you know, if they don't bring back enough treasure, the brand will eventually kill them. So they're basically forced into this position unless they can find a way to remove their brand otherwise, which is possible. And then, of course, they end up just shipwrecked on the island anyways. So they start shipwrecked on this island. They don't know where the Martel quartermasters are that they have to deliver treasure to. They have to find them. They have to find the treasure. And they have to just fend for themselves. Which is a cool start. I mean, it's basic. It's a little heavy-handed, but it works.
You all right? That was
There you go.
impressive.
So like I said, we're playing Maze Rats. Very basic system. This is a modified version that's a little bit heftier. So there is some level progression because players are going to level up exploring Hot Springs Island. There's basically 3 classes. There's the mage, there's the disciple, which is basically a cleric, and then there's the vagabond, which is both the warrior and the rogue, and the ranger. Again, like it's every martial thing all tied up. And the mage gets random spells every day. The cleric, the disciple, gets predetermined set list of spells every day, so they don't switch. And then the vagabond is just good at killing things, and that's pretty much it. And when you go up in level, every couple levels, you just get like a little bonus that you get to pick. So like the disciple might pick a bonus that like buffs one of his spells to be better than it used to be. That's basically, like, it's not major. They don't have to read much, and it's pretty simple.
Not bad.
It's not a game that I would probably enjoy playing over
Quite something.
15 sessions or something. It's a little basic. But for something like this, I think it's perfect. So anyways, yeah, they started out, they're shipwrecked on this this beach, this steaming hot beach that has like magma rivers running underneath it, and it's all the beaches on Hot Spring Island are black sand because it's cooler. And they set out into the island, and they soon come across a giant statue of some elven woman that's half buried in the ground. And this is sort of the thing with Hot Springs Island, is some of the locations, like the big locations, are really fleshed out. They have maps, they have information, they have like tables that you can roll on to determine some random events so that no 2 campaigns are really the same ever. For, you know, random events for that specific location, which is pretty cool. And, you know, the important characters are fleshed out and detailed.
It's closed
Like,
in effluvium? What kind of crazy monster are we dealing with here?
what they, you know, their personalities, what they're looking for, what they don't want to happen, blah, blah, yeah. All the major characters are spelled out. But throughout the island, there's just a slew of these little little locations, like little sub-locations, like this statue. And all the book says for this statue is that, you know, it was built by the elves to honor this priestess or whatever, millennia ago or centuries ago, whatever. And it's magical. You know, it's humming with magical energy. And magic users in the area, their spell casting is enhanced within like 1 mile of this statue. That's it. That's all it says. And, you know, the players can approach it and they'll be like, well, you can just say you feel enhanced, you feel more connected with magical energies while you're in the area. But they're going to want to know more. You know, there's going to be more to it than that, of course. So they're going to keep prodding. And it's up to, that's where the improvisation comes in. You have to decide what's going on with this statue. You know, the book sets up a lot of things. It's up to you to play it out, which I'm fine with. I think that's pretty interesting. So my sister is playing a mage, so she wanted to sort of like commune with this statue, to like sort of
but more like a possible match, not a definite ID. We
connect.
might get an upgrade from shooting stars to superstars if we actually do find Valhazak here.
She wanted to connect her magical energy with this energy, this statue, which is not in the book. And I'm just like, okay, well, let's have you do a roll, because that'll determine some things. So she rolls, and she rolls snake eyes. She rolls terribly. So I'm like, okay, there's some sort of disconnect here. She just gets rocketed backwards, takes some damage. The others, however, suspect that there's perhaps something more to this statue. There's got to be something going on here. Perhaps there's something inside the statue. So they climb up the arm of the statue. They go up to its face. They see that the eye sockets are empty. There's nothing there. So they peek into the eye sockets and they see that the statue is hollow inside, and it extends downwards into the earth because it's half buried, so it keeps going down, and at the very bottom they see something glittering. And so I figure, okay, you know, we'll start pretty basic. So of course, you know, they go down there, they grab the gems, and I throw like some magic item at them, and then again, none of this is in the book. I'm just going along with it. And I'm like, okay, there's got to be some enemy here living in this statue. What's going to live in a statue? So I look at the bestiary of the book. It doesn't have stats for anything. This is a systemless book. It's a systemless campaign, so you can run it with anything. And Maze Rats is good because it's very simple. You don't have to come up with much stats. And I look at the bestiary of things that are living on the island. I'm like, what would live in this dark, dank statue? And they have giant centipedes. And I'm like, that's pretty perfect. Let's have a giant centipede attack them. So they get into a scuffle with a giant centipede. Which they win. You know, my aunt always has to be sort of contrarian about everything. She ended up with this, like, trained pet snake. This venomous snake that's trained as part of her guild of assassins or whatever.
There it is! We did it! Valhazak is really here!
And so I had told her that its venom caused, like, paralyzation. in full-grown humans that lasts like an hour or something. And so she had her pet snake bite this this 12-foot long centipede, and I didn't have it immediately be paralyzed, and she was just like, what the hell? You said it would paralyze full-grown human. This is just the centipede. It's like, yep, it's a lot bigger. It's a lot bigger than a human.
Rubium's cut your health in half. Have you got a nullberry on you?
No, I don't have a nullberry on me, you bitch. In general, she just has to sort of complain and argue about everything. There's not what you really want in a player, but whatever. So they kill the centipede, they get out of the statue, and it's getting a little dark. They want to recover from the fight. So my sister, the mage, had randomly rolled her spells, and she got a spell that allows her to create a portal to a extra-dimensional cabin where they can all rest and eat and stuff, which, when you're trapped on a shipwrecked on an island, that's a pretty good spell. Now, every day she gets to re-roll her spells, so she's only going to really get this once. But she uses it. They all get a good night's rest in the cabin. They don't have to worry about finding shelter, or, you know, being attacked by more giant centipedes in the wild. It was good. It was good. It was a lucky spell. The next day, they head back to the island. And they continue on. They're wandering through the jungle. I roll some random encounter, and they randomly come across like a drunk lizard man. And I was pretty certain they would just like jump this guy and murder him and take all his stuff or something, but they actually just let him pass by. I was very surprised. Next, they came across a bunch of like beached whales on a beach. And the whales are actually like perpetually regenerated and kept alive by some ogres because they use it as a food supply. And they also use it to train their young ones on how to like kill or how to butcher a whale. So while they're at this beach, of course, a group of ogres come by with some kids, and they start cutting up some whales. And I was very curious to see what they would do about this. Whether they would attack or whether they would try and talk. And they definitely take some preconceived notions about ogres, and they assume they're just horrible monsters, which probably many ogres are. These ogres are actually former slaves of a Ifrit that lives on this island. They actually recently revolted and freed themselves. For the most part, they're actually pretty friendly with adventurers. And they could actually form a nice little alliance if they ever actually talk to them. But they decided to just wait it out and actually follow the ogres to see if they lead them back to their home. Ow, 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 ow! The ogres don't go back to their home. They don't go back to their village. They actually go to a separate spot nearby on the map where they process all the blubber and they cook up some of the meat, and then they take it back to the village. And so they sit there, they see, like, the chief cook there is very jovial. He seems like a very happy, nice guy. The children are hugging him, and it's just all seems so happy. I'm trying to hint that maybe these are not bloodthirsty monsters, but they, of course, don't even think about going to talk to the ogre, even though I have them like speaking in common and stuff. Like they clearly understand the language. I drop all these little hints, but they don't go for it, and they just sort of like and they talk about, like, well, what if we kidnap one of the children or something? Like, what the... Where is this coming from? But eventually they just forget all about it and they just move on. Okay. You know. We'll get back to that, I'm sure. They continue wandering through the jungle. And they come across a... sort of like burning field. This like part of the jungle that's on fire because of like magma vents and stuff. And again, this is one of those sort of statue type situations where the book really does not say anything. So it's up to the players really, although they probably don't know it, to decide what's really here. You know, is this worth investigating? They decide it's not worth investigating. So they keep moving on. Okay, let me just finish talking because I actually have a bunch of... I have the whole other session to get to. They come across the base of the volcano on the island. And at the base of the volcano, at this spot where they discovered, there's a cave entrance, basically, like a crack. And they see on the ground leading in and out of the cave are footprints or, you know, tracks. So clearly this is being used by something. So they make the intelligent decision. Not sarcastic. They make the intelligent decision to stake it out and wait and see what's coming and going. And it doesn't take too long. Eventually they see some salamanders. These sort of walking, you know, these bipedal reptilian fire creatures. And they're typically traveling in small groups, and they're sort of like talking amongst each other, and like maybe some jokes are being passed amongst each other, and they're all carrying like packs and stuff, and they're coming in and out. And
great work, partner.
they get the idea that, well, one of the spells my sister got that day, randomly, was called Masquerade. and she could touch someone and basically like copy their appearance, or she could touch two people and have them share an appearance or whatever. So she decides,
Partner, are you sure you want to go on that quest from the Admiral?
that they should lure one of these salamanders over, and she could take its appearance and then go inside. Okay, I mean, there's a lot of problems with this plan. One primarily being that you will be alone in this cave, apparently full of these creatures, with no knowledge of their culture, society, or language. But, okay. It's not my job to say any of this. And so they go over the plan for a little while, but eventually they lure one of these salamanders over with some sounds. They jump him, they tie him up, they knock him unconscious with like a rock and a stick. And she takes his appearance. And I had her do a roll because I think technically this is meant to just like copy like a human's appearance. She's trying to become a salamander. Very different body type. But, you know, whereas something like D&D would specifically shut this down and be like, you can only copy a humanoid appearance, you know, blah, or a human appearance, whatever. We try to be a bit more flexible than that. So I had her do a roll to see if she could muster the magical energy in order to do this. And she did. She succeeded. So I let her do it, and I put a smaller time limit on it. It was only 3 hours she could be this salamander form. And it didn't grant her any knowledge of being a salamander, just she had the form. So she grabs this pack, and she goes into the cave. And this cave is a mine. The Ifrit that I mentioned earlier, who used to have all these ogres working for him as slaves to mine these red crystals, he's now had to resort to using salamanders instead, who used to be like his guards. So the salamanders are not happy about their new position as miners. So they're all pretty grumbly about it, but they really fear betraying this Ifrit. So they do their job, but they're pretty half-assed about it. So this is the main mine where all this crystal is mined. And so the salamanders go in and out. A lot of them are lazy. But at the entrance here, there's a guard post. And the book mentions that at the guard post, you have to like hand off some materials. I think in hindsight, this is meant to be you hand it off as you leave the mine. Like stuff that you have mined, you're meant to hand off, and anything special you found while mining, you're meant to give as like a payment or a tribute or whatever. But I misunderstood, I think, at the time. And so I had it stuff that you hand off coming in. And so the book mentions that the person at the guard post, the salamander at the guard post, she really likes like this type of jelly and this type of moss or something like that, like these weird plant things or whatever. She'll especially take that. And so my sister looks in her sack that she got from the salamander, and I'm like, okay, there's a bunch of like rocks in there. There's like one gem, and there's some like jelly and some moss and stuff and blah, blah, blah. She walks up to the guard post. She gets, called over. And the person there, the salamander there, says something in a different language she doesn't understand. But intuitively, she starts taking things out of her pack, which was smart. That's what the person wanted. That's what the salamander wanted. And she did end up giving them like the jelly and a gem and stuff like that. And eventually the salamander waved her on. And so she went in. And that's where we called the session. Not the most thrilling session, perhaps. There was only like one combat. But they all really liked the setting. They were really looking forward to continuing to explore this island and seeing how everything works. There's a lot to explore. It's a huge book. There's a lot of different small encounters and situations, and you have all these factions, and should be pretty interesting. But anyways, moving on from that, we have our main campaign, Looming Shadows. That session was not the most exciting either. We did have one combat, which with 4th edition D&D, that's all you really want to hope for is one combat. We're in the city of Stanton. We came here to request military aid, that they muster their armies and they go to march on Zuknul against the Dark Lord and his forces. The problem is, Stanton is not a normal city. It does not have like a king or a lord mayor or something. You know, it does not have one person in charge with one army to command. It's made up of a bunch of different nobles and their houses, and they work together as part of a council to decide what's best for the town. But the problem is, most of them seem to be squabbling about one problem or another. So the council hasn't really met in like 3 months. And none of them really like each other. Which is not what I want to hear. It's not what you want to hear when you're trying to request military aid for this looming threat. So we talked to the clerk at the council tower. He explained this to us. He said he would send out the request for the council to meet, but it probably wouldn't happen. And I'm like, okay, we have a few different options then. A, we can sort of sit around and help them and solve all their problems and get everybody buddy again. That could take some time, though. B, we can force them all to work together and to supply their forces towards Zuknul through coercion, violence, kidnapping, whatever it takes. This is a bit more ruthless of an option, but for the greater good, it could work out. 3 is we give them a common enemy. Instead of telling them there's an orc army on the way and they need to get ready to meet it, we actually bring an orc army here at their gates, and they fend it off, working together. This is the quickest option, but potentially the riskiest, because it's possible that the town just gets overrun. But if the town gets overrun from a sudden orc attack, then that would probably have happened anyways, so... Also, they may just, in general, no matter what we do, they may be more concerned with being on the defense rather than being on the offense. I mean, I don't blame them. It's a lot smarter to just bunker up here in your fortified town than to march your small army across the continent into Mordor to take out the Dark Lord. I mean, it's just a no-brainer. You know, it would take a lot of convincing for them to really be certain that it's a better option to go take out the Dark Lord. Like, defense is not an option. And this is, I mean, we're making a lot of comparisons to Lord of the Rings here, the Silmarillion, the Second Age, the Last Alliance of Elves and Men, blah, blah, blah. In that situation, defense was not, like, they had to go kick Sauron's ass. And they all worked together to do it, and it was all good. A big problem is, as I would find out, well, there's a couple problems. One is that, you know, each of the, you know, the one guy that was willing to work with us was Lord Wolf, who is the old Artemis's father. So from the original campaign, or not, this guy is probably not his father, but he's part of that family. I went to him, I talked to him, I explained it to him. He believed me, and he's like, all right, this is serious. I have 120 trained men. You have access to them, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, great. We have 120 men. Even if all 7 or 8 lords in this town have 120 men, if that's the average, you know, we have less than 1,000 men to go take on Sauron, you know, the Dark Lord, whatever. It's just not enough for them to go marching in. they would be on the defensive. No matter, like, that's just the smarter option no matter what. They would be slaughtered, basically, if we sent them into Zuknul. It's just not good. And so I'm sitting here, I'm just pondering, and we split up. Most of the session was all of us split up, going to different lords and talking to them and trying to convince them. I did not agree with that, but Thomas was insistent. He thought it was just, why don't we just go to all of them and tell them? You know, what does it hurt? Well, I mean, basically, it just eats up our session, is what it hurts. I guess that's sort of a meta thing, but it did. It ate up our whole session because each one of us has to have our own conversation with these lords. Just takes forever. And yeah, we had, like, one guy was already on our side. A couple of the others we helped out real quick. They agreed to meet with the council, but overall it was just not looking good. One person just refused to meet with anybody, and another guy wanted to meet our whole group. He wanted to meet all of us just to see, you know, if this guy was telling the truth or whatever. So we meet back up, we talk about our options. I'm just against, I feel like we gotta just flee this continent. We gotta go to, like, Ragnar, the main capital of the world. We gotta muster that army. We gotta get some, like, elves on our side. We gotta unite the world. We can't be spending all our time here in Stanton, which is already fucked up. But we decide, you know, we got a few people on the council. We might as well talk to, you know, sort it out, I guess. So we're like, okay, let's go meet this one guy who just wants to meet all of us, and then he'll join. He'll go to the council meeting. We go to this guy's castle, and of course it's a trap. We get thrown down into this pit immediately through this trap, and we get into a fight with a couple Otyugh, which we kicked their asses, no problem. But clearly this guy's not our friend. He's got this, like, little steward who, after we kill the Otyugh, he, like, leans over and looks down in the pit to see if we survived. I, of course, teleport his ass over the pit, so he falls down. We grab him, we handcuff him. We're gonna, like, beat some answers out of him. I try some shenanigans to try and get us out of the pit, but long story short, it doesn't work. So the guy says that there's a way out if we go through this small passageway, so he leads us out of the castle into the river. We get back out, we're alive. We take him to the Temple of Cordan, and he tells us everything he knows. Basically, his lord, the guy he works for, is working with the Dark Lord. The Dark Lord sent out these messengers, apparently, these envoys, to convince certain people to work with him. You know, promising all these rewards and riches and blah, blah, blah. And so this lord agreed and has been working with the Dark Lord, and he's basically been responsible for fucking up the council and causing all these problems. And so some groups, I suppose, would play this and think, oh, well, we take out this guy and we restore order to the town and all is well. Of course, I think this represents a far greater problem. Because this means the Dark Lord is far ahead of us. And apparently, this guy was approached 3 months ago. So we're 3 months behind the Dark Lord. Who knows how many messengers and envoys he sent out? Who knows where he's all sent them to? You know, we could have far-reaching problems here. And this is where I really started to, like, double down on the idea of just abandoning this continent. It's possible he's already sent out envoys around the world to orchestrate this massive thing, in which case we're real fucked. In that case, our only hope is to then do, like, a Fellowship of the Ring and to infiltrate Zuknul and, like, shut these portals ourselves. But it's not like just throwing a ring into the mountain, you know? Like, we actually have to, like, go to war. these portals are not going to be... They're going to be surrounded... There's a lot of problems. And this is the type of shit that I love. I mean, I'm glad he's throwing this all at us. He's trying to make this as difficult as he can, which is good. It's just I'm not exactly sure what the best course of action is. Every course of action we'll take has problems. And I don't know what our team is best suited for. Anything we do other than going into Zooknul to try and do this ourselves is going to take time. And it's possible in the end we could have some mass alliance. If we weed out all these bad dudes, we have some mass alliance and we go to this giant war. It's possible that that could solve things. I don't think they would win the war. I think we'd still have to go towards the portals ourselves. But it would be a very nice distraction. But the amount of time and effort that would take is drastic. But anyways, long story short, that's pretty much where we left off, trying to decide what to do. Before that session, Ziggy had mentioned, like, he almost feels like just converting the campaign over to Shadow the Demon Lord or starting a new Witcher campaign. Because, you know, everyone's into Witcher right now. I said, well, if I can cast a vote, I'd rather convert it than start a Witcher campaign. Because I don't know that much about Witcher. I don't know what that campaign would even be like. And I want to keep going with this campaign. I want to see this through to some conclusion. So that last session we did with 4E, because we were all set with 4E at the time. But now we're like, okay, Ziggy and I have been talking about Shadow the Demon Lord. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of it. He's a pretty big fan of it. It's just a better system. I mean, Shadow the Demon Lord is D&D as it wishes it could be. So I think tomorrow, during the session, at the start of the session, we're going to do some character creation. It's really more character conversion. We're converting all of our characters over to Shadow the Demon Lord, which, for some characters, it's trickier than others. And then we're just going to continue with Shadow the Demon Lord, which is pretty cool. So for Artemis, who in 4th edition is just a scion, with like some telekinesis powers, he's got some conjuration stuff. He could be telepathic, sort of. Just a lot of psionic stuff. I decided for Shadow the Demon Lord, he's going to be a magician, obviously. And originally I had him set up with telekinesis, the telekinesis tradition, the telepathy tradition, and the conjuration tradition. So I figured, okay, it covers all my bases. Since then, I've done more thinking and reading and blah, blah, blah. I'm thinking about dropping telepathy and going into order, which is sort of very traditional Artemis, as like God Artemis. Of like, order lets you like change dice rolls and stuff like that, and sort of like predetermine how dice rolls are going to be, like changing failures to successes and imposing order on things. And I think that's pretty cool. So I'm probably going to end up with telekinesis, order, and conjuration. Shadow Demon Lord is just really cool because you can build your character like hyper focused and hyper good at like one thing, or you can build it so he is just the most versatile thing in existence, which very much appeals to me. So yeah, I like you just get so many options in Shadow the Demon Lord. It's fantastic. So yeah, we're gonna convert our characters and we're just gonna keep going. Same campaign, same setting, same everything. There might be some growing pains. I think we're gonna stick with using miniatures and a grid, which we've never done with Shadow the Demon Lord before, but it can perfectly accommodate it. So yeah, it should be pretty interesting. We'll see how it goes. I mean, it's just a great system. But all right, we've talked long enough here. So check out the 56-minute Montauk House video tomorrow if you have time to spare. We've got more Baldur's Gate 2 and more Plague Tale coming this week. That'll be that. My name is Mangg. This has been Hanging with Mangg. See you fine folks next week.